The countdown is on and I have less than a week to finish my granddaughter's baby quilt before her mama's baby shower. So let's bust some butt and get this quilt done. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain and welcome back to the homestead. My daughter's baby shower is in less than a week, so I need to finish the baby quilt and get ready to travel to Tennessee for the baby shower. Now we are in the final stretch of finishing this quilt. I need to finish the binding, which is done with hand sewing. I also need to finish the appliques and to give the special touches that make this garden quilt unique and special for my granddaughter, Rosemary. Now the most time-consuming part of this project is going to be the binding. Now I'm a little disappointed in the way that my walking foot sewed the binding. Usually you would sew it 1/4 of an inch. I didn't really realize until I was way too far into it to make an adjustment that walking foot does not have a 1/4 inch measurement from the needle to the edge of the foot. It's more than a 1/4 inch. So that's going to make wrapping my binding a little bit challenging. Now, while I say that, this is the back of the quilt you're looking at. I want to cover up this stitch line with the binding, so I need to fold this over and make sure it covers that stitch line. Because the seam is wider, it's going to be tighter to do that, and I may need to do some trimming along the way. One of the things I didn't think of when I was in the fabric store was to buy a thread to match this fabric. Now luckily I had one that's going to work. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's close enough that I'm going to get away with it. I prefer to do this part of the project with hand sewing. And I need to clean my glasses. They are so dirty I can hardly see myself in the camera, much less what I'm doing. So let's get these cleaned up. Huh, better. I can see you. Okay, so I need a needle. I'll use this one. Now when you're hand sewing, you want to choose a thread length that's manageable. It's tempting to do a really long thread so that it lasts longer. So you don't have to keep threading your needle. And when you're my age, threading the needle is getting harder and harder to do. But when it gets too long, then you tangle it, and it just makes it a whole lot more difficult. So you want to do a manageable length. Now we're not going to start directly in the corner. We're going to start near the corner, and I'm on the back. And I'm just going to push this through my fabric. Now you definitely want a thimble for this part of the project because you are going to get finger sore pushing through so many layers of fabric. Now what? Talk with my mouth. Talk with a needle in my mouth. That works. Can you understand me? Probably not. Okay. What we're gonna do? Come on up. Sit close. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold my binding over, and I'm just going to do a little whip stitch right here. Now I want to try to make my stitches, oh, you can't see me. I want to try to make my stitches as invisible as I can by kind of hiding them underneath the edges. This is going to be too thick. Now when I'm trimming here, I want to make sure I'm trimming the right things, nothing that shouldn't be trimmed. So we're just folding this over and we're sewing it down. Now I also want to try not to poke through to the other side because I don't want all these little stitches to show on the front either. Now once I get going, this is going to go a lot faster. But with any hand sewing project, it just takes time. Now, the really nice thing about hand sewing is I can do it anywhere. And I feel like I'm going the wrong direction. I feel like I should be going this way, but I wanted to go towards the corner. That's why I'm going this way. The nice thing about hand sewing is I can do it anywhere. So I can do this in my bed while I watch TV. I have a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I could take this and do it in the car because, you know, when you live in the middle of nowhere, it takes a long time to go anywhere. Now our goal is the front is going to be nice and finished. And our back, we just want those stitches to kind of disappear, which they're not disappearing as much as I'd like. I really feel like I'm going the wrong direction. I want to go the other way. We're going to go the other way. Now the reason I'm starting near the corner is because I want to show you the corner, and then I'm going to go to town and get this done. Yes, I'm much happier going this direction. Because I feel like I'm hiding my stitches better. And this is all we're going to do. We're just going to sew the edge of this down to the back of the quilt. Now, like I said, you can do this with a machine. I prefer to do this with hand sewing. I think it looks nicer. Some people do it in a single step, whereas I sewed the binding to the front of the quilt and then I hand sew it over. I sew it to the back with hand sewing in a second step. Some people sew it completely on in a single step. But even with my larger quilts, I've made twin size quilts, I did all of this with hand sewing. So when I get to the corner, now I'm going to fold this back over in a miter. So that folds nicely over the corner. Now, because this is a baby quilt, I always make sure this little extra section here is sewn down really well. On a wall quilt, I would not go through the trouble of like tacking this down as tightly. Obviously, you want it to be secure, but it doesn't need to be like it doesn't need to be as tacked down. But with a baby quilt, you've got little fingers that could get in there, so I want to make sure there's no little openings for little baby fingers to stick into. So now that that corner is done, I wish that laid a little bit nicer. It looks very nice on the back. Now I just forge ahead and get this done. So that's all there really is to it, to sewing on a binding. We're just going to do a little whip stitch and go all the way around the quilt. Now the fun part is, I'm sure my daughter knows I'm working on a quilt for her, but I haven't mentioned it at all, so she has no idea if I'm going to make it on time. And I told her that the baby wouldn't know when I gave the quilt, so if I didn't finish it by the time the baby was born, that was fine, right? Didn't matter. What I told her. But I wanted to be able to give it to her at her baby shower. All right, I'm going to keep going, and I'll see you for the next step. I finished the binding on the quilt. So this is sewed all the way around the entire quilt so the edge is secure. Now we're going to go ahead and finish the flowers. So if you remember from the very first video, I had cut a round template. And that's because right here in the center of the flower, we put a finishing applique circle on it. Now remember, this is bigger. This has the raw edges in it that will get turned under. Now I decided I wanted to sew these on at the end because I wanted to be able to quilt all the way to the center of the flower. And I also didn't want to quilt onto the center applique. I wanted to be sure not to stitch onto it to kind of take away from the clean look of the center flower. Now I want to add some color to these centers. So it's going to have a white center, and I want to add what's called a yo-yo to the middle, which is going to give it a little bit of dimension and hopefully kind of give it a finishing touch, which is not in the original pattern, I might add. That is my own addition that I want to add to kind of make this quilt be set apart from anyone else who makes this quilt from the pattern book. So the first thing we need to do is we need to cut these patterns. So I have a piece of cardboard here, and I want to go ahead and trace this pattern. And I need to see if I have a tool. I do. I found it. Now this little wheel allows me to draw a 1/4 inch border on the inside of this. So all I do is I put the wheel at the edge of my circle, and then I just trace along the inside. And it's going to give me a 1/4 inch border. Let me show you. Now it's a really nice day. The thermometer on the deck says it's 64. So I have kicked all of the cats outside and told them to play in the sunshine. So they are not happy with me. There, now I have a cutting line. I'm gonna hold on to this. I might need it for my yo-yo pattern. So now I'm gonna go ahead and cut this pattern out. Now this I'm going to use to iron my appliques so that they will have a perfect circle to them. Now I'm still going to use this pattern. I'm going to use this to cut them out. I'm just going to use my water soluble pen and I'm going to trace 6 circles. Trouble is sitting at the window looking at me. Now pretty much the rest of the work on this quilt is going to be handwork. I considered putting the appliques on with the machine, but sewing a circle is not that easy to do it smoothly, and I think that I'll do a better job doing it by hand. Now what we're going to do now is I'm going to do a basting stitch. And I've actually switched to hand quilting thread. Hand quilting thread is a little bit heavier duty than regular all-purpose thread. Might be doing this a little bit too far in. I might have to get the feel for this. Now a basting stitch is just big loose stitches that we're going to use to gather and turn the edges underneath to the back of the circle. So you can see that this is already starting to puff up. Now what I'm trying to get it to do is I'm trying to get it to fold around. And I might cut this just a little bit smaller. I will. I can always cut a new one. Oh my gosh, those were my sewing scissors. Here's what we wanted it to do. So you can see how it pulled around the edges. So I have a nice needle. My needle's still there. I have a nice clean circle. And now I'm going to use my iron to iron that down. And here we go. We've got our perfect circle to do our center. So this is going to get sewn right on here, right in the middle. 5 more to go. Now when I'm on the back side, pressing it where the seam allowance is, I don't want to move my iron too much, just because then it won't lay flat. Now a yo-yo is made pretty similarly to what we did with the applique, except this time we're going to fold over the outside edge as we go, because we don't want there to be a raw edge on the outside part of the quilt. So by folding this in, it's going to pull that raw edge inside of the yo-yo. Now I'm just eyeballing this 1/4 of an inch. If you were uncomfortable eyeballing it, you could mark a line, but it's not going to be that detrimental. So I've made my way all the way through around. And now we're just going to pull this tight. So this is a yo-yo right here. And this is going to go right in the center of my applique. And I think that's a good size. Might want it slightly smaller to make a little bit more white around it. Whoops. So I'm just going to use my wheel and make this just slightly smaller. Now, one thing I've been trying to decide is, should I go ahead and sew on the appliques and then sew on the yo-yos? Or should I attach the yo-yos to the applique and do it in one step like that? Can't decide. Can't decide which one's going to be most secure, because I don't want these to come off. I want them to be nicely secured. It'll definitely be easier to handle to put the appliques on first, so I don't have to worry about my raw edges. So now I'm going to go ahead, I think I'm going to sew these on first. And I'm just using a whip stitch. And I'm just using that whip stitch to attach the yo-yo to the applique. Now I have pinned it in place so it won't move. And I am trying to sew as close to the edge of the yo-yo as I can so the stitching doesn't show. I want it to kind of hide. I want it to kind of be hidden on the quilt. I don't want you to see these white stitches. Alright. Here's the first one. So now my big question is, there were 9 colors here in the flowers. So I have to decide what 6 colors are going to be represented in the centers. I've been debating it. I do not know. But I guess it's time to figure it out. I will be back when I have all of my centers sewed on, and we're going to go on to the next step. Last night I finished the appliques with the yo-yos, and I went ahead and I started sewing them on just because it was getting late and I wanted to get into my pajamas and get into my bed, and I sat in my bed and relaxed and did this, which is the benefit of hand sewing, is that you can do it anywhere, not just at the sewing machine. Now, I left one so you could see me do it. So the first thing I do is I take my applique and I fold it in half, because I want to try to find the center of my circle, and it's hard to do that when it's not in half. So I center this up as good as I can, just eyeballing it. And then I just check my placement, see if I'm happy with that. And then I go ahead and pin it into place. Now, because of the raw edges here on the bottom side, I have all these little raw edges. I want to make sure those are pinned really nicely so that it's easier to sew down. So I have probably over pinned it. I actually use 8 pins to secure this circle so that it's nice and tight and it's not going to move or have any trouble like that. All right, so now it's pinned into place. Now I'm still using, oh, this is not. This is actually regular thread. I thought I was using hand quilting thread. It doesn't matter at this point. All right, so now we're just going to sew on this applique. Now I want to go ahead and start here so that my knot will get tucked underneath. So I want to tuck that. I want that knot to completely disappear underneath. Now I forgot to put on my hoop. I did find it easier to go ahead and put this into a hoop as I'm doing this. Got a little bit of blood on there. I poked my thumb. Your own spit will take out your blood. Come on, hoop. Behave. I don't think I have it tight enough. We're just going, oops, I need my thimble. Now we're just going to sew this on, and we're going to be careful not to go through to the back of the quilt. So I have my finger right here on the back so I can feel where the needle is touching. And this is just a little whip stitch. And notice whenever I'm holding on to the quilt, I always try to keep the back of it to my hand. That way, if there is anything on my hand, it is on the back. Although, of course, I've washed my hands. Now I am using a thread that's really too long. It never pays off. It's just easier to use one that's the right length. Now this is all there is to it. It's just a simple whip stitch. It's very simple. It just takes time because hand sewing always takes a little bit of time. Now my poor baby quilt probably smells like smoke because in between quilting and farm chores and just regular life, We are also making maple syrup. So while Philip has been doing most of the work with the maple syrup, I have had to go outside and give him hand time to time when he needs to do a sap run or if he needs to go get more firewood. I go outside and I man it to keep it going while he's away. So I really need to wash this before I take it, and I'm supposed to leave in 2 days. The good news is I'm almost done. Now, we did do a video series all about making maple syrup, so if that's something that you're interested in, I'm going to put that video up in the top so you can check that out and see how we make our own maple syrup right here in Kentucky. Now, making maple syrup is super simple. It's just very time consuming, and I have thoroughly enjoyed doing it. Of course, he does most of the work, so makes it even more enjoyable. But he is working hard. I have a goal of making 5 gallons of maple syrup, and he wants to make my goal. Now, in just the last few days, we had a cold spell, and all of our sap froze that we had in our buckets, which was kind of nice. We just left it in the buckets and waited for it to warm up. But when it warmed back up, the sap started flowing again, really well actually. And he has, well, as of yesterday, he had 120 gallons of sap to boil. And I collected more today. Probably another close to 15 more gallons today. So it's keeping him busy. Now, even though we did invest in some equipment and things for the maple sap, to be able to make the maple syrup, we are still going to make more than enough maple syrup to recoup our investment. Now I'm going to finish this up and I'll be back with you for the final step of the quilt making process. Now technically, it's finished. Technically. And the reason I say that is because the quilt itself is done. It's bound, it's quilted, the embroidery is all, the appliques are all attached. And I'm super happy with how cute it looks. Now, the reason I say it's not technically finished is because I have a final touch. Now, this quilt has a theme of a wildflower theme, and that's why I chose a block that is a flower. But while I was in the fabric store, I found some butterflies. And I found some bees. And I didn't finish stop looking there. I found some ladybugs. And I think this is my absolute favorite. This is a dragonfly. It is adorable. I think these are so cute. I think this is going to take the quilt to the next level. It's the name of this quilt is Garden Song, and this really takes it to the next level of gardening, is to add the pollinators that make gardening so special. I just need to figure out where I'm going to place them, and now these are going to get sewn on next. Now, since most of these appliques have black around the edges, I am going to use a black thread to sew them on. And they are very thick, so I'm definitely going to want to use my thimble. Now all I did was I just pulled onto that knot gently until it popped through the layers. Now, just like the appliques, Well, these are appliques. They're just not handmade. We just do a little whip stitch and tack them down. Now I don't think I'm going to get really fussy about like the antennas on the bees and the butterflies. I think those will be fine if they are not attached down, and like it has a really skinny little leg. I'm going to leave that as well. Now there are 10 little insects that I'm sewing on. 2 butterflies, 4 ladybugs, 3 bees, and a beautiful dragonfly. Alright, so now I'm just going to work my way around the quilt block by block, sew on all of the appliques, and then it will be time to give my quilt to my daughter. I'm super excited. So I am going to try to get some footage of her receiving her quilt at her baby shower, but I'm going to go ahead and close out now. Friends, thank you so much for joining me as I've made this garden song baby quilt for my granddaughter Rosemarie. Now, even though I didn't design this quilt, I made a quilt from a book, my quilt still came out very unique for my granddaughters because of my customizations and the things that I did to make this quilt special for Rosemarie and for my daughter Faith. Well, friends, as always, I really appreciate you watching. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. I'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Now keep watching to see the end results and to see Faith receiving her quilt.
This is the quilt.
I don't know, you're going to have to see.
They're boots!
That's what you needed.
Yay. It's the quilt! And it's from my mom. It says, A Garden Song for Rosemarie Hardy 2025 by Gigi Barbara Sue Kowalski. It has a little flamingo. Apparently that's something on Steven's side of the family. I have no idea what that means, but I guess I should figure that out. It says in a field full of roses, she is a wildflower. Rosemarie Hardy. That is gorgeous. I'm so glad you got it done on time.
On Wednesday.
It took her 5 years to finish my quilt. Wow.
Uh-oh. What is that? A special baby. Special baby.